mornings, 10 a.m, and I look forward to seeing you.
Revelation Television is committed to making a wide range of Christian television programs, from studies to documentaries, from debates to music programs, from testimonies to talk shows. All are made possible because of viewer support for Revelation Foundation. Thank you for making it possible.
Hello and welcome to the European Report. Here we are once again in the heart of the European Union, here in the European Parliament. In today's programme we're going to be discussing the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which marks International Holocaust Memorial Day, and we'll also be discussing the recent terror attack that we saw in France only a couple of weeks ago, and discussing, are we losing the fight against terrorism? And in this programme today I'm joined by Bastian Bilder, MEP for the Conservative and Reform Group.
Thank you,
and also Perrine from the European Coalition for Israel, so it's a pleasure to make your debut on the programme. Also joined by Julien Canner, who is the president of the Conseil Central Israel de Belgium.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to the programme. And also we have Edith Rosenweg Abu, who is the deputy Israeli ambassador to Belgium. So welcome to the European Report. And I'll first start with you, Bastian. We know that you do incredible work here in the European Parliament for Israel. Can you give us a little bit of an update on some of the activities you've done on behalf of Belgium, but you also had a very interesting excursion to China where you met with many Chinese Christians. Maybe you can share something about your recent visit.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Firstly, I want to underline that I'm not looking back too much, but more looking onward. What can I do in a positive, in a constructive way? And there are a lot of tasks here to improve the image of Israel, the interest of Israel, and that is my daily reflections. On China, of course, this is my third report on EU-China relations. As a Protestant, the interest of the Chinese Christians, be they Protestant or Roman Catholics, are very near to my heart. So I was in touch with the state authorities on religious affairs, and I will proceed on it. But at the same time, I must say that I'm a Dutchman, but a little bit I feel in my heart I'm always part of the State of Israel, although not a citizen, but a friend. So when I go outside, I'm always looking what should be beneficial for the State of Israel. And I was very much encouraged by the fact that a dear friend of mine in Israel, Ambassador Oded Iran from the Institute of National Security Studies in Tel Aviv, he is very busy with having more intense contacts between Israel and China. And we can perhaps, I hope, play also a positive role in this. I phoned him last night and congratulated him for next week. There is an important event on Israel-China economic relations, and we have also in the European Parliament and European institutions close economic relations. So I shall do my utmost to convince the Chinese that they should more and more collaborate with the Israelis, for there is a lot to profit from them.
That's for sure, that's for sure. And Perrine, you make your debut on the programme. I know that you work very closely with Thomas Sandel at the European Coalition for Israel, but can you share something about your background? How did you get involved in politics, and where did your passion for Israel stem from? And a little bit about your role within the European Coalition for Israel.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for having me here with you.
Pleasure.
Actually, I got involved in politics by working here 24 years ago, the European Commission. I made my first step here. Coming also from a political family background in France, the interest of the country has always been on my heart. I've been involved with Israel since about 15 years, as I went to Israel for the first time during the second Intifada. And as I was there visiting friends on a private visit, I realized the distance between what I was reading in the media or seeing and what I was witnessing on the ground. And that opened a new search for me, and that's how I got more involved with Israel. On my journey, I became the director of the France-Israel Foundation. That was a joint initiative between the French state and the Israeli state 10 years ago, trying to rebuild relationship between the two societies, understanding that it was becoming more and more difficult in the relationship between France and Israel. And it was a privilege for me to launch this foundation and to be managing it for several years. And then I went on in different political implications in France, but I never left my interest for Israel and the Jewish people and the Middle East, and that's how I got involved with European Coalition for Israel in France and here. My understanding is that it's important for people who are not from Jewish origin to have a voice, to give their perspective, and to stand against anti-Semitism, of course, but also to bring a different perspective on Israel, on the conflict in the Middle East. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Excellent. It's a pleasure having you on the programme, Perrine. And Julian, you are very much a Jewish leader here in Belgium, and it's an absolute pleasure to have someone of your stature on the programme today. Can you share something a little bit about your remarkable history, because you are a child survivor of the Holocaust?
I don't know, it's remarkable. It's a typical history of a Jewish person born on this continent in the late, very late 30s, and who survived it. And born in 1939, Brussels was liberated, although I'm not from Brussels, we were from Ostend in 44, so the earliest years of my life. What it left as within me, I don't know, but maybe it's part of anxiety. Maybe I used to blacken the situation of Jews in Europe and their future, and I always said, no, I'm overdoing it because I have this anxiety within me. Now, the fact is also that, you can everybody can write a novel about his own life, but the fact is that at least I had a life. Yeah? And somewhere, if you were on this continent in those devilish, demonic years, you have to explain how and why you survived. Having been survived is not the normal situation. And then you realize, growing up, bit by bit, because when do you realize that you're an independent human being? It comes bit by bit when you search for your own history, your family's history. You realize that if you survived, it's also always a matter of seconds of millimeters. You have to explain why you escaped normality. And on top of that, I was lucky enough to have my parents after the war. My grandparents from my mother's side didn't come back from Auschwitz, and so on. But the subject of survival was within my family a taboo subject. So whatever I picked up about our way of living between 1940 and the autumn of 1944 was because I heard my parents talking to their friends and remembering some spots. I don't have the full story, but one thing that I've heard once is a very strange story. So we were Jews from Ostend. In 1942, we were Belgian Jews, which was rather exceptional. In 1942, we had to leave Ostend and to settle in one of 4 cities in Belgium: Liège, Charleroi, Antwerp, and Brussels. My parents went to Brussels. They went into hiding in one spot, and I was given to Gentile people. And again, the survival, I mean, is very odd. I once heard the following story, that somewhere in the spring of '44, the lady where I was hiding that kept me had a, an extramarital love story. Her husband learned about it, and he went to the spot where my father was hiding, because my mother was already hiding in another spot, and he said to my father, he said, you know what, my wife is not doing the right thing. Yeah? If I want to have my revenge, I could go to the Gestapo and tell them that she's hiding a Jewish child. That would be my revenge. But if you can pay me for the kid as well as as much as you pay my wife, then I will not denounce her. So luckily my father still had some money apparently, and he paid the gentleman as well. So I've been used somewhere as a blackmail in an extramarital, but at least I survived. Absolutely. I had a life, and I tried to do something with it, and I hope I succeeded.
No, I think you have, and it did. It's a great pleasure to have you on the programme, representing the State of Israel as the Deputy Israeli Ambassador to Belgium. Can you explain to us how you got involved in diplomacy and why you wanted to represent Israel at a diplomatic level?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to be here.
It's a pleasure.
I was a lawyer. I was a criminal defense litigator. And after a few years practicing, I found myself looking for more meaning, to do something more substantial. And as an Israeli, like Farin mentioned, there's a huge gap between the reality on the ground and how it's presented in the media around the world, and it's very frustrating. So I thought I would take my litigator skills and try to put them to better use. And that is how I joined the ministry. Luckily for me, I found my husband there as well, so it worked out perfectly. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Also in the programme today, we're discussing the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which represents International Holocaust Memorial Day, which is remembered on the 27th of January every year. Bas, this month represents, as I said, the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz Nazi death camp on the 27th of January 1945, that marks the International Holocaust Memorial Day. Now, despite the Holocaust education over the last decade, the European Parliament here, they have a very moving and powerful memorial service. Parliaments around the world remember the Holocaust. We're seeing the Holocaust story of the Nazis more and more through Hollywood blockbuster films. And yet at the same time, we're witnessing a resurgence of anti-Semitism across Europe that we haven't seen since the 1930s and 40s. I know it's a very difficult question, but why do you think this is happening today?
I must say that in this journal, the Israel Journal of Foreign Affairs, very good specialist Robert Wistrich analyzed what was going on last summer here, and he laid bare what are the sources of these upsurge. And we cannot hide the fact that it was especially Islamist and Muslim offspring. So we should really tackle this issue in a proper way. To mention only one thing, I should look at my own responsibilities. I said already to the High Representative during a debate last month that we had here, in the context of the Gaza conflict, several rounds of plenary debates on the situation around Gaza, but no one about the upsurge of anti-Semitism in our own continent. That says a lot. I think that we should be very alert in every resolution of the European Parliament where we can make it hard with the facts, that we should address it. I give you one example. We had a discussion, it is a small subject, we had this discussion some months ago on Venezuela. I know that there is a lot of anti-Semitism, official anti-Semitism, without already Jews. But there is a very tiny Jewish community. Then I see it as my responsibility to tackle this issue and to mention it openly. We should confront it where it is possible. Where it is possible. I am born in 1946. My parents, I'm very grateful to them, as Gentiles, as non-Jews, educated me at home, what happened. And that should, again, be in the families, in the schools. I'm a former teacher of history. Pay attention to it. But what is now happening, I learned that there are classes also in the Netherlands with young people with an other background, Muslim background, that is very difficult to speak on them on the Holocaust. Then you have the totally rejectable comparisons between what's happening in the Middle East and the Holocaust, for example, and what was shouted. What we are now remembering the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. But be sure, Professor Wistig gives a lot of examples what was shouted at European streets last summer. Hitler was right. Hitler was right, for example. Or worse, cleans the earth of the Jewish people. Here in Europe, yes. So we should confront it. We should confront it. And I was very moved, I must say, when I read this article from Professor Michael Brenner. He wrote an article, Israeli und Israeliten. And what he writes touched my heart. He said, he wrote about Herzl, that the Jews at the end of the 19th century did their utmost to be good patriots. Even more than good patriots, but they were not accepted. They were not accepted. So he wrote, and it was very shocking to German Jews, then to Austrian Jews, to Swiss Jews, and all the Reichs, that we are a people, we are a nation, we are a nation. And now he writes, unfortunately, for the generation before the nations came to power, there was no state of Israel. There is now a state of Israel. Then it escaped, state of Israel. And then he writes, and that is criticism that is always heard here in this institution.
Yes.
Oh, can I not criticize Israel? Of course, but in a decent way. And what he writes is what has failed. There is a lack in European societies of a clear commitment to accept the existence of the state of Israel. That is at stake. That is at stake. And also a clear reaction of all sorts and all types of anti-Semitism. We should confront that. It is now more than time.
Absolutely. Julian, you just told us in your introduction your incredible story. But when you see today the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, and you see it again, do you think that Europe has a future now?
If Europe has a future, I'm not a prophet, so I will not be able to answer that question. The fact is that, you know, I just heard what Bas said, and it crossed my mind, and it might be navel staring. In fact, by what I've heard in the streets of Brussels, I'm condemned to death again. I've been on that list of Jews from Ostend, and written the end of 1940. My name is there with my grandparents, and next to my name, somebody wrote "too young." Really, I've got it here. Too young. Now, when I hear again "dead to the Jews" in the streets of Brussels, it's about me they're talking. So, having been named a crybaby, somebody who blackened the situation, I'm wondering what is happening again. Now, the fact is that there were some tranquil years following the Shoah. Yes?
Yes.
And this is over. This is over. One could have wondered why so many illusions and not even lunacies like anti-Judaism hasn't disappeared. after what happened, the epitome of evil, now it seems to be back again. Maybe it is because it is so deeply rooted in the psyche of even of Europe that it faded away a little bit. It just went underground for a while, and it never actually died. It went underground and it resurfaces in our days. And that is a very, very difficult situation to face. But on the other hand, there is also from Europe or from European countries a reaction. Take, for instance, Belgium. Now, for the 27th anniversary, the Royal Majesties, the King and the Queen, will go to Auschwitz on the 27th. And I'm one of the few Jews that have the honor of accompanying them. So this is a positive sign, which already occurred 10 years ago when a previous king also, by his presence in Auschwitz for the commemoration, sent a positive sign or tried to send a positive sign to the society. It is not forgotten, and reactions are still there. But I sometimes think that anti-Judaism belongs to the inner texture of what is Europe. And what would be nice also, and again, I'm not the center of the universe, definitely not. We all think we're the center of the universe. We see the universe from where we live. But this European institution here could maybe have thought of creating a commissioner, of nominating a commissioner specifically dealing with the utmost evil of anti-Judaism.
Absolutely. And it did. I mean, you're probably born in Israel, live in Israel. What are your experiences here as an Israeli being in Europe with the rise of anti-Semitism?
Well, actually, coming here was my first time to encounter anti-Semitism. I lived a very sheltered life. In my previous post as a diplomat, I was in Singapore. And Asia, anti-Semitism is not, fortunately, got to Asia. And I was quite shocked, actually. I thought it was an issue of the past. And I came to realize it wasn't. I came to realize that it became more politically correct nowadays to replace the word Jew with the word Israeli. And then you can say whatever you want, including the most horrible things, accusations, demonization, anything. It is quite disturbing. It makes you feel very unsafe. I feel also that, in a way, people prefer to pay lip service to the remembrance of the Holocaust and put some flowers in the Holocaust Museum in Mechelen, and then just after that say that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Right after that, we find that, for example, here in Belgium, in Flanders, they would not obligate to teach about the Holocaust in schools, because they find it difficult and uncomfortable. So when they talk about genocide, they teach about Rwanda instead of teaching about what happened right here. We found only a week ago the head of the opposition, former Prime Minister of Belgium. We all, after the murders in France, everyone said, "Je suis Charlie," I'm Charlie. "Je suis Juif," I'm Jewish. And he felt the need to add, "Je suis Palestinian." What is the connection here? I wonder, but the urge to add that every time you say the word Jewish is something extremely disturbing. And this is, for me as an Israeli, a very disturbing experience, because in Israel you feel very safe, you feel very secure in your Jewish identity, you never feel the need to hide. And here you feel the need to keep a lower profile. You see in synagogues, you don't see outer signs in synagogues here in Belgium, you see a lot of security. You see it, I went yesterday to the Jewish kindergarten to enroll my baby. Yeah. And I saw so many layers of security. Then there was the police, and there was the army, and there were people with dogs. And no one wants to see security with dogs around their children's nursery.
Yeah.
So this is indeed extremely disturbing.
Yeah, Abbas, I know you want.
Shortly to add, I think it's very shameful for me as a Dutch citizen that children, school children, like my grandchildren, are going to a school that is more like a bastion, an army installation, a fortress, and that is and that's going on. And no outcry, no public outcry. I was, a year ago, we had the opportunity, the privilege, to be as MEPs, to be in our national parliament. I addressed then he was Minister of Foreign Affairs, now he's Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Timmermans. I asked him, give an example that the Dutch nation cares about its Jewish community. Gives an example about a proper European behavior towards the State of Israel. And he was silent. He did even not answer me. I broke the protocol. I went straight to him and asked him, why are you not answering? Yesterday, there was a press notice that he had an interview with a German daily that he has now sleepless nights about the security of the Jewish people. I tweeted, he awaked. But that is the issue. I'm an historian. When you look carefully to what happened to the survivors of the Holocaust in my country, in Poland already, to speak about the latent or even openly anti-Semitism, it is good, and I hope as Christian that it is that it is coming up again to our mind. What are the roots? Yes. And that we should combat it and to struggle it. I'm a Christian. I should go and look to my own churches. When I don't feel and don't hear any love and affection toward the Jewish people and the State of Israel, it hurts me, and that is my first responsibility. And there's also, I must admit, also a struggle in the churches in the Netherlands, because there's a lot of sympathy of the Palestinian victims. If Israel is not a state of law, is not the only democracy. It is not an issue of don't criticize Israel. We speak about the Israelization of anti-Semitism at the moment in Europe, but the issue is there is no clear reaction of the deniers in the Arab and in the Islamic world of the existence of the State of Israel. And that should be look at Hamas. How many supporters here have Hamas? You can't say a lot.
Ampareen, I very much want to bring you on board on this one. I mean, here we are, remembering 70 years of the Holocaust. And it appears that Europe has learned nothing from the Holocaust, in which over 6 million precious Jews were murdered at the hands of the Nazis. In your opinion, why don't you think Europe and European institutions are learning from history when we're seeing this insurgence of anti-Semitism that doesn't only threaten the Jewish communities across Europe, but also threatens our entire Western civilization?
I don't think we'll ever learn. I think we will never learn. I think learning is a process. And I think that it's not because my great-grandparents knew how to read, my parents knew how to read, that I will know how to read. What I mean by that is, and I will go in the same direction that you both shared before and Mr. Belder shared, I've forgotten personally everything, almost, actually not everything, about my high school years. The only thing that I remember is 2 Holocaust survivors that came for a day with an exhibition in my school and talked to us. And I remember I was 12, I saw pictures that I've never seen before, and that impacted me in a way that nothing impacted me most in my 6 years of high schools. So what I mean is that we will never learn in Europe. We need to learn over and over and over again. So the question for me is this generation now, why this generation hasn't learned, even less than the previous one? Why do we still hear what we hear? Why do we still see what we see? And in France in particular.
Yes.
So it's all about what we've already talked, this poison in our hearts. Why this generation has this poison in its heart that welcomes such hatred, rejection of the Jew. And I'm sure we'll discuss more about it.
And obviously the next issue that we're going to discuss is very much linked to this whole issue of anti-Semitism. And that's the Charlie Hebdo massacre that we saw in Paris 2 weeks ago that was shocking, including the killing of 4 French citizens at the kosher grocery store. Perrine, can you describe how you felt when you saw your city and your nation under siege from the Islamic State, the attack on the Jewish community, and the sense of feeling that there is now in France in light of this hideous terrorist attack?
First, I was there about an hour. I was on the ground about an hour after the attack took place in Charlie Hebdo, for the reason that I am in charge of an organization which building is 1 block away from Charlie Hebdo headquarters. One of my best friends, his brother, was one of the cartoonists who was killed. And one of my collaborators in this organization I am in charge of, his daughter was in the school in front of Charlie Hebdo. So it was quite intense that Wednesday. I think it was intense for every French person. First, it's a shock, it's an emotion. There is an emergency. You think of taking care of what you need to take care. Then comes a reaction of solidarity and unity, and you've seen it. It wasn't perfect, but it was significant, and we can recognize that. 4 million people in 3 days mobilizing. It wasn't perfect. We can talk about details, but we need to recognize that the French people reacted. And now we come in the third stage. Take perspective. And it's a shock. It's a shock for the French society. Because as you said, we failed in many ways. We failed the Jewish community. We failed a certain value that we thought was eternal, freedom of speech. And it's the time, if we miss this time now of thinking, of taking perspective, of asking honestly how and why did we arrive there. And if we don't open our eyes, then it will be a failure. I don't want to talk about a failure now. I can talk about a disaster. I can talk about something horrible that happened, but I won't use the word failure for France right now. It will be a failure if we are not able to learn from that. That our politicians have said things, have stood together, and I can recognize that. Now, they should take action. It should not be only in an intense period of 10 days.
Yes, yeah. Just following on that very, very quickly, do you think the French government is doing enough now to protect its Jewish population? Because we've seen a huge increase of French Jews making aliyah to Israel or going to the States. To be Jewish now in France is a big question. And can the Jewish community in France survive if the French government don't do enough to protect its French citizens?
The French government just took a measure of putting security by each French synagogue, Jewish synagogue in France, and each Jewish school. This is not the answer. This is an emergency measure to protect the Jewish community, to give a sense of security. But as we said before, this cannot be the answer. Military presence and security cannot be the answer. So is the French government doing enough? Probably not. If we came to that point of having 4 Jews killed in this kosher supermarket. But it's not that easy. We have a very large Jewish community, very integrated. Know that France has the largest Jewish community in Europe. So we're talking about protecting more than 500,000 persons. Not so easy to do so. So for sure we need again to do more and do better, but we need to go beyond security. We need to go about teaching. We need to go about tackling those who come against this community. We can't only put a weapon against this mentality. We have to find another way, and we come back to the idea of education. We come back to the idea of tackling on internet, websites, social network. We come back to this idea of dealing with the poison that is spreading in the heart of this generation.
Yeah. And Julien, we only had over the weekend, didn't we, here in Brussels, a terror raid on Islamic State terrorists who are planning to carry out an attack on a judge. pretty much like the beheading we saw in England back in 2013 with Lee Rigby, who had his head chopped off in public. I was also told that they were also wanting to target a Jewish school as well.
I didn't know about that.
As a Jew from Belgium, when you see what's happening in France and you see what's happening here, are you concerned about European Jewry? And is the answer aliyah to Israel, or do you think the governments across Europe can create more robust policies that can actually protect the Jewish community from here?
Listen, although I'm not exactly into politics, what I'm going to say is my own personal, non-political projection into your question.
Look forward to it.
The fact is that the ominous resurgence of anti-Jewish demagoguery and attacks in Europe are definitely aggravated by the fact that European countries had an immense challenge in coping with a sociological change within their different countries, and that is the integration of Muslims into their countries. So, and on top of that, there is, of course, the influence of extremist movements within radicalism, within Islam, who are influencing part of the Muslims of Belgium, the Belgian Muslims, by which I think that for a number of European countries, the Jews are against a problem, because for these radicals, the Jews are, as I said, the epitome of evil. So how do European countries cope with that? First of all, maybe in previous years, there was kind of a denial. We have other problems to tackle than Jews and so on. They listened to us, but maybe they thought that we were overdoing it for whatever reason. Now, I guess they're realizing, because what happened first in the Jewish Museum in Brussels, what happened in London, what happened lately what happened in Denmark, and so on, they're bit by bit realizing that maybe a firmer and stronger reaction, as we see at this very moment in Belgium, is absolutely needed. So what will be the future? Of course, in a situation like that, Jews are asking themselves, as far as I know, those that I meet anyway, because there's such a humongous diversion within what they call the Jewish entity. Some of them, indeed, think about their suitcases. Do they think about it? Do they prepare them already? Have they already left? There are no exact figures for Belgium, and I even wonder if the figures that we read from France are the exact figures. But on the other hand, are all those Jews that think about leaving the old continent, going to Israel? I don't know. Some of them, and I know one couple, so that's really a minimal approach, left for Florida, of all places. Others are thinking maybe about Canada or even the US of A. But that there is a question about the immediate future, and especially about the future for their own kids, it's obvious and it's clear that these questions are asked, and everybody will have to know for their own. So you cannot force people to do a number of things, and Jewish leaders will, I'm sure, not do that. But they're well aware that the people are asking their questions, and that these people that are asking these questions will find, in function of their possibilities, a solution to the question marks.
Yeah. And indeed, maybe the difference between now and 70 years ago is there is a state of Israel. There is refuge for the Jewish people. There is a Jewish state to provide protection and sanctuary. In your opinion, how does the Israeli government respond when we see terror attack on Jewish citizens in France, and we know that they had a burial in Israel in the recent Paris attacks? How strong is it that what role can Israel play in supporting the beleaguered Jewish communities here in Europe at this time?
I'm very glad you asked this question, because immigration to Israel, for Israelis, it's blessed, and of course we welcome everyone that would want to come to Israel. I say come back because it's a very strong emotional, spiritual move for Israelis. However, it is also a victory to the terror. At the end of the day, if the Jews of France all pack up and leave to Israel or anywhere else, it means that the terrorists have won. And this is also something that is bad for Israel, is bad for the world. It means that the world is not safe for Jews. It is more important for Jews to be safe all over the world. And if they wish to come to Israel for whichever reason, they're very welcome. It is more important that the world is safe for Jews than that more Jews come to Israel. And this is very important to emphasize. And I think the role of the State of Israel is to empower the Jewish communities, that they would know that in the extreme case, yes, they would have somewhere to go, but they would know that they're also powerful enough to demand their rights as citizens, as French citizens, Belgians, or citizens of the UK, to demand the protection of the government, to demand political steps, to demand a reform in education, and to stand for their right to be safe in their own countries, not to live in as Farin said, security is a temporary measure, because at the end of the day, the person that should be in jail guarded by guards are not the Jews. The person that should be in jail are the terrorists. So the State of Israel, the role of the State of Israel is to empower the Jewish communities and to fight with them the fight to make the European approach toward the terrorism more strategic, more comprehensive, to contribute whatever we can on the level of intelligence if we can, and just to give a solid support to the Jewish community and also to the governments of Europe in this fight.
Yeah. And Bastian, I want to bring you on board on this one. I mean, the European Union, its institutions are very willing to crack down on what we see the traditional form of anti-Semitism, the discrimination against the Jewish people, that from the far right, such as the Nazis and the fascists. But isn't there this failure to recognise and deal with what we see, this rise of anti-Semitism within so many of the Islamic communities? I'm not saying all the Islamic communities here, but certain mosques and certainly the spread of radical Islam throughout many Islamic communities across Europe, who are becoming filled with the hatred and violence because of the influence in the Middle East and the attitudes towards Israel, that we need to confront this form of violent anti-Semitism in Europe before it's too late.
Yeah, I'm always eager to underline the political competences. I think it is firstly the competence of the member states, so it is national politics. Yes. Therefore, my party on the European and national level are cooperating very closely together. But that said, and I want to add what you said, that was very important. I'm here a member of the Israel delegation for many, many years. Last 5 years as chair, now as a vice chair. And it is not only on the relationship between EU and the State of Israel, it's also on the relationship between the EU, European Parliament, and it's all the Jewish community inside Europe. For we have an association agreement, and we oblige each other that we should also fight together, EU and Israel, against all forms of anti-Semitism, and also to have good connections and to protect the Jewish communities on European soil, and that is at stake at the moment. In my experience, I must say, in this institution there is a lot of restraint to really table the issue of anti-Semitism from Islamist sources, outside and inside Europe.
Yeah.
And that is deplorable. For example, I vividly remember that mostly when I prepare my speeches, for example, on the enlargement process of the Balkans, there were several interesting reports of anti-Semitism and Islamist cells in Bosnia-Herzegovina, for example. And I only asked questions about it. It was I was banned almost by a leftist person, that it was a taboo to speak on it. It is unbelievable. So we should really address it, and that is what you already said. When you speak about it, then it is. Yesterday it was again, I experienced it. Then again, directly they are speaking about Islamophobia, directly. To water it down. No, there's but I want also to say something what said me especially. The last years I used every plenary debate on the Middle East to address the High Representative Mrs. Ashton and now it is Mogherini to say what I learned from Israeli security experts like Yoram Schweitzer about the real threat of ISIS also to Europe. For
yes,
he wrote that it is inconceivable that all these thousands should not return here and with their indoctrination should act. And now we are in the midst. No answer, total silence at all, denial, even worse. And it is saddening me, especially now we are in the midst and who are in the main line, in the main front, that are the Jewish communities. So we have a double responsibility now to act, and I hoped that the ministers of foreign affairs yesterday and next week I learned of home affairs and justice will come up with really measures that protects firstly the Jewish community and so we all in general.
Excellent. I know, Prin, you wanted to come on this one.
Yeah, just want to make 2 points at that time of our discussion. The first is, I'd like to say there is no France, there is no Europe without the Jews.
Absolutely.
And we need to remember that, we need to repeat that, we need to make it a reality.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that. The second point is what happened in France, to go along with what Mr. Belder just said, is with the Muslim community. Some people are saying that it's a confrontation between this radical Islam and democracy. There's this clash. Part of it, yes. But I think we should not limit what has happened to that. We shall give back the responsibility to the Muslim community itself. It is for them to now question themselves. Why is it? It's not only for the democracy, for the government to solve the problem of Islam. It is for Islam in itself to question why do we produce that. We talk about moderate Islam a lot. Right, now it's time to hear those voices that will say, why do we produce this? Why is our religion opening doors to such radicalism and such hatred and such violence? So I think it's important in our process of thinking what we are going through right now, not only to think in terms of opposition, of clash between radical Islam and the rest of the democratic values, but it's also important for us to encourage Islam itself to deal with its problem within themselves. And I know it's not an easy task for them.
No, that's a very difficult task. Prin, I do want to ask you about the Charlie Hebdo publication. I know you have a copy with you. In terms of the Islamist attack on Charlie Hebdo, clearly this was an attack on French freedom and freedom of expression and journalism. Is there not a danger now that in light of this attack that we're going to see many more media outlets fearing to report the truth because they feel that they could now become a target by terrorists?
Yes, I think you're right. And the fact that I have one copy here but I will not show it is an example of that. But I think there are two aspects of that question.
Yes.
The first is fear and intimidation that comes. And this, we shall not bind into that. We shall not accept that because of that cover of this news magazine of this week, that if you had seen it, it's the prophet crying and saying, all is forgiven. And you see what? You see in Niger, 10 people who died yesterday, 20 churches were burned. You see what happened all over the world, in Gaza, in many other places, Pakistan and so on. This is not acceptable. And we shall fight against that, and we shall not be fearful and intimidated. Now, this is the first aspect. Now there's a deeper level into this. Freedom of speech is really under pressure right now. And it brings us the question, can freedom of speech be an ultimate value? Can everything be said?
That's a very good question.
And that's what we need to ask ourselves.
Yes.
I am for Charlie Hebdo, even though I haven't been a weekly reader of that magazine, but I am for them to have the freedom to say what they said, even though I don't agree with the mindset that carry them. But I would like our society to question itself on what is it the freedom of speech. In the French motto we have 3 words. We have liberty, freedom, we have equality, and we have brotherhood, solidarity. And I think those goes together. We cannot talk about freedom of speech and not put it in balance with brotherhood. So what we've lost in our society, I'm talking about the French society right now, who is under pressure, is this brotherhood dimension. What I'm going to say is going to have an effect on people around me. Am I conscious that I am free to say what I want, but am I conscious of the fruit in the others around me? And that's what we need to question. Is Charlie Hebdo free to say what they want? Yes. Is everything they say is good? No.
Absolutely.
And I am not for damaging, mocking others' beliefs. I'm not for that.
No, exactly.
But I am for their freedom.
Yeah, we're down to the last 5 minutes of the programme, so we kind of need to wrap up. And Julien, I want to bring you on board. I mean, you've seen in this programme here, which is an incredible show of strength, both from the Christian community and the Jewish community in Israel. What more can the Christian community do to stand with Israel, to stand with the Jewish people, to make you feel that you're not alone, your community's not alone, and that we're fighting against the rise of anti-Semitism, and we want to do what we can to support your community?
Thank God we're not alone. But Christians are not alone either, because when you look around what's happening in the world, it's not only Jews that need Christians, but Christian needs Jews as well.
Absolutely.
When we speak about brotherhood, that's real brotherhood. What happened with the Christian minorities in the Middle East, I don't have to tell you what happens. We all know what happens with them. What happens, like I've just heard in Niger, the symbols of Christianity are just destroyed. So what can you do more? Please continue to do what is happening right now. Christians and Jews in this very strange planet of us and this time frame need each other. Let it be known and let it be done and let it become our future, our common future, against those that attack the basic values of democracy. Because that's another question. You know, because of what happens, democracy is under siege. We, in a democracy, are pushed to the limits of the democracy.
Absolutely.
And as a Jew, I only can live in a democracy. And I'm sure that as Jews and Christians, democracy is where we meet, and that is what, together, we have to fight for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that is the essence.
And Adit, I have to bring you in here as well, because Israel represents everything that is good about Western civilization, our Judean Christian heritage. It's where our values stem from. It's where our morality stems from. What can we do to stand with Israel today?
I would say that when I go to churches here in Belgium, I meet great people, and I get overwhelming support. But outside of the churches, I don't hear these voices. And I would say that I would encourage people to get out of the churches into the media and into political life. I can only talk about my Belgian experience. And I've been to many churches here, and I met so many people. And then again, during the Gaza conflict, we felt very isolated. We got a lot of threats and a lot of demonstrations outside the embassy, and not a lot of support. And I know the support exists, but it keeps within the communities. It keeps within the social circle of the church. And that's what I would say. Please,
And Bas, within 30 seconds to build up, how can Christians support you and the important role you do in representing Israel and also the Jewish communities here in the European Parliament?
I am very grateful, really very grateful that we have a strong organization, Christians for Israel, in the Netherlands. Church members that really go outside and that are very open on their convictions, and it's for the well-being of the whole society. Just as Professor Kleiner said, it is to lead a normal life, a decent life, a secure life, and also a religious life. And I'm also very grateful that strong supporters for my work are here, persons like you and Christian organizations like ICA, the Jewish agency, and Israel, the IAC, there are several Christian organizations that are supporting me, and we have good contacts and regular conferences. So the only thing is we have now a new parliament, so we look for more friends, solid friends.
So thank you everyone for joining me on the European Report today, and I want to thank you for watching today's programme. You had first-hand accounts of some of the historical horrors and the evil of anti-Semitism, and sadly we're seeing the rise of anti-Semitism today. We need to do more to counter it. We need to email and write to our local MEPs to encourage them to do more to stamp out the evil of anti-Semitism. So we thank you for joining me today here in the heart of the European Parliament, in the European Parliament. So thank you for watching today's programme.
The programme you've been watching was made possible because of viewer support for the Revelation Foundation. Programmes take time, effort and money. If you'd like to make similar programmes possible, then please send your gift to the Revelation Foundation. The details are on the screen.
So let's talk about the number of animals on the ark. If we realize that in looking at the taxonomic way in which we describe creatures, and we realize that actually the created kind was really probably at the family level, but even being very generous, and let's just do this at the genus level, well, when you take a look at the chart like this, there's about 2,300 genera of birds, about 3,700 of mammals, and approximately 1,900 of reptiles. You're only talking roughly about 8,000 kinds of animals. Now, the ark had one pair of each unclean kind. Well, so first of all, we double that just for pairs, so now we're at about 16,000 animals. But we have to add, because there's 3.5 pairs of clean, we have to add 2.5 pairs to every clean kind. And so what we end up with is about 17,500 animals. So we started at about 16,000, but by adding the extras, we end up with about 17,500.
This is an appeal to stop dirty water deaths. Sadly, you won't see it in the news. But today, dirty water will kill 1,400 children, more than malaria and AIDS combined. These children have no choice but to drink water from rivers, swamps, and stagnant ponds every day. Imagine your child drinking dirty water, knowing the next sip could kill. Right now, you can help save a child's life. Simply text TAP to 70123 to give WaterAid £3. WaterAid already has teams in place to install the pipes, pumps and taps that will bring clean water to children at risk. They just need your support. In the next minute, dirty water will kill another child. So please, don't wait to save a child's life. Text TAP to 70123 to give £3 now. Thank you.
Sophie can't tell anyone about her suffering. Her abuser says it's their little secret. Jack can't call us for help. He's terrified of being beaten. Ben can't speak out, and he hasn't been fed all day. Right now, too many abused children